Hi, Steve Addison here for the Movements Podcast. A podcast for people who want to multiply disciples and churches everywhere. Today we're back in Houston, talking to the NoPlaceLeft Houston team.
I was personally doing a lot of hip-hop outreach and evangelism, and came to a point where I realized the people that we were reaching out to at our hip-hop events weren't getting plugged into local bodies of Christ, and a lot of the local churches in those underserved neighborhoods weren't really reaching out with us. And so I began just talking about it, and then someone at the Union Baptist Association had invited me and said that they would pay for me to go to Chicago for the T for T training. And while I was in Chicago, from Houston, I was sitting at a table that was across from Guy Caskey, who I connected with. And when I came back, I found he lived like 2 miles down the street from my house. And ever since then, he's been coaching me for organic church planting. And I just kind of began to be coached through that. And that's how I got connected through the M4 network.
Here in the city a long time, almost my entire life. I came to Christ in my bedroom reading the New Testament, and been part of church planting teams since 1989. But had a heart for multiplying and reproduction, starting a church in 1997. It was kind of a cell celebration model that had a lot of the principles of multiplication. But just started learning a lot. And for me as well, the Wheaton gathering in Chicago was a real key for me to get around even more best practices. But I've also served in the Horn of Africa and been a co-strategy leader in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So I've been exposed to a lot of this for years and have been practitioner here, in a lot of ways lonely, you know. And so through years of praying and really grinding and laboring, God began to change the culture and climate here, and more people started becoming receptive to more of a no place left multiplication vision. And I started getting connected to different people. I asked the church that I had planted to send me out for this type of vision, both here in the Horn of Africa. And then throughout a period of time of just a few years, 5 or 6 years ago, I met Trey. And then I think I met Ray. And Ray came here, and he was told that I would be one of the first people that he would meet right in the city. And then we all started just connecting and sharing this vision and started teaming together, because we just feel like far more together than we can as individuals. If we really want to go far, we need to go together. Of course, if you want to move fast, you can certainly go by yourself, but we just start believing in the value of team. And that's kind of how we got connected.
Okay. How about someone else?
I can speak. Yeah. So, Philip, I was a student pastor for about 3.5, 4 years on the east side of Houston. And then my family and I moved down to the southeast side of Houston to be a student pastor for the church there. And just through that time and hearing more about movements around the world, taking people over to London to partner with my brother and people over there and seeing what God was doing, God just stirred in my wife and I, and we continue to hear this word movement. You know, read some different books, but just stepped out in faith in 2015 and said, okay, we're going to work to see multiplying disciples and churches all across the area. And 2 months into that, God connected me with Ray, and which was right about the time he had gotten to Houston, just a little bit before that. And so it was a connection of a connection of a connection. It was God working things out. And we got connected with Ray and the NoPlaceLeft network, and gave us more focused vision and, tools and process to actually accomplish the vision that God had placed on our heart.
Let's hear from one more person, how you got connected with one another.
I'm Roger. I came to Christ in college in North Carolina and was immediately plugged into a church there where everyone made disciples. So the first few weeks, I was a believer. I was sharing the gospel with people on campus, which if you listen. It's the Burke Wilson and the NC State University, which you've had podcasts on before. And so I was with them, and about a year after I came to Christ, a guy named Jeff Sundell came and gave us a training to kind of simplify some tools and get more multiplication of that. And I formed a relationship with Jeff, who kept on telling me to get connected with Ray, who was in South Carolina at the time. And so eventually, at first I was like, no, Ray does not sound like someone I need to connect with. I'll just do it on my own. Mm-hmm. But I figured doing it by myself in Raleigh was not working, and I should join a team. So I agreed to join his team in South Carolina. And then he said he was hopping over to Houston. And I was like, man, that's so much further away than South Carolina. But eventually God led me to come down here to join him. And then right when I came down is when he connected with both Guy, Trey, and Philip. And so they're all working together.
Great. And we know the reason Ray came was because he was chasing Sarah.
That is correct.
Yeah. What is it now that God's doing? What's he put on your heart as a team?
One of the amazing things about No Place Left Network is the unity and commonality of vision, but also processes and practices. So I think that learning, for me, we spent 9 years trying to figure out movement and in massive process, and we feel like we got almost our feet on the ground, but there still weren't handles on tools that could actually reproduce. And I think by God's grace, there have been a tool set and processes that have come back to the West, back to the U.S., that really unite that heart that we all had already. I think we already had that heart in us for it to multiply in our local communities and across the city and across the globe. And so then having common practices, common principles, common language brought that vision together.
And what is the vision for Houston?
So right now what we're praying for and shooting for is to have a reproducing church in all 165 zip codes of the Houston metro area by 2025.
Okay, so not just a church, but a reproducing church.
That's correct.
That's correct. So churches that meet in homes, churches that meet in businesses, churches that meet wherever, but have intentional in prisons, a lot of good prison work, but have intentional DNA to multiply, to make disciples, start churches that will raise up leaders and reproduce.
It does as well. One, when you have a big vision like No Place Left, you need clarity. So you need to have a clear path and simple steps. We've learned from Steve Smith. I think he communicated that. But big vision, clear path, simple steps. And so common language, common process, all of that just gives clarity, not only to us as leaders, but also to those downstream and to every church. We're just working on our goals today. So big part of the reason why we came together since 9 a.m. is we just said we wanted to really focus in on 2018. What do we need to see happen to see, I think it was 32,500 churches in the greater Houston area to see 10% of our lostness reached. That's just 10% of our lostness reached, 32,500 churches. So the big vision forces us around the table to ask, what's it going to take? And we need clear path in order to see 32,500 churches. We need simple steps in order to see 32,500 churches. So it forces us to, vision dictates our steps and our goals even. So then, okay, what type of goals do we need to set in order for 2018, in order to get us over that hump of trying to see multiplying churches in every zip code, specifically even to see 10% of our greater area reach. So we came up with a list of goals for 2018, and it's just driving us to the table to come together to work together for that kind of common ownership. And that's the beautiful thing about what a team is, rather than just this one or two, is it really is giving greater local ownership in Houston, because each one of us around the table represent a whole number of churches and people that we're leading. This is a network of networks in the city. But there's just more and more local ownership that's taking place in Houston, which is exciting.
So who gets in the room then? What is it that, Ray, that qualifies each of these folk to
they pay me money. No, I'm joking. I think the network, I'd say that across, these are just guys that already were in the trenches. Even before I got here, they were already in trenches. We've learned from one another, learning from Guy. not only just, in their churches and their church work, but also just, just from the experiences that we all bring to the table. But every one of these people around the table are in Harvest. Every one of these people around the table are coaching and have leaders that they've multiplied themselves into. They have generals that they've raised up, and or Timothy's in the Harvest that they have, or personally have started churches that have started churches. So these are just the guys that God's allowed us to, and the women, that the Lord has opened up the door for us to just be in relationship with and have that common kind of language. But right before we got on the call with you, Steve, we were just kind of daydreaming and just dreaming about the day 2 years from now when maybe there'll be multiple teams across the city representing something similar to what we're doing. That it's not just enough to get everybody at one table in one room, but let's see multiple teams across the city taking just as much local.
There's also
it's a big city, isn't it?
Yeah. There's also a commonality amongst us that we're all submitted to Christ, abiding in Christ. And everybody here at the table has a humility to know that this isn't us or our knowledge and wisdom, our education, our degrees, but it's strictly being humble enough to know that it's God working through us. And so we spend very little time arguing or debating and more time moving forward and strategizing. So that's rare to find in all leadership groups. But in this one, I see that as a common thread.
Yeah. Okay. And so you've got a clear goal you're working towards. One of them is a reproducing church in every zip code. But Ray, you're also saying to reach 10% of the population, we need 35,000 new churches. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What are the other good things that you're doing that's helping in terms of getting the job done as a team?
We overlap in different ways. So we've started annually doing mid-level training together. So bringing our leaders who are leading churches and hopefully getting to multiplying churches, bring all of them together to learn together. And then also in each of our networks doing our own training as far as that goes. There's been a lot of cross-pollination between our networks and saying, okay, we're going to have a time we're going to push the gospel forward over this weekend, and different people from the networks will come to help this other network. So we have cross-pollination in those things. I think also one of the strengths of the network as a whole and the team coming together is not the humility to not posture every time we're together, so we can learn from each other. Today we're talking about things that we're each not doing well in our networks, but when we collectively bring that together, we can learn because we have more experience and exposure across the whole network than just in our areas. And so bringing that learning together, I think, really helps us to move forward more quickly.
Okay.
We've also just implemented meeting monthly. This core group of leadership networks coming together, us, the smaller group, meeting monthly, more regularly for a couple hours per month. That's another thing.
And I would say just cross-pollinating, I guess, the greater No Place Left Houston network. We tried this past year to have once a quarter or so, like a unity gathering for all the churches in the No Place Left Houston network to kind of have one big celebration together to hear testimonies from around the city so that people who aren't necessarily in this room, they can see that they're part of something greater, that this is a bigger movement than just their maybe one house church that they see every week. So I think that's been great as a way to build network cohesion outside of just the leaders.
Yeah. Okay. And what are you learning about what it takes to reach a city like Houston? 6.5 million people.
I think one of the things that even was big in our conversation today and this morning was making sure we're really getting into oikos and seeing movement travel down those lines and highways of oikos. So even brainstorming, how do we work with the people that are currently in these churches to then break into new areas through their oikos. And really even appropriately aligning maybe Luke 10, 2x2, House of Peace strategy. We did that last couple of years, and maybe Spirit is revealing to us some more appropriate times for that, to be using it, as opposed to necessarily all the time, but more to break into new areas, new territories, and establish those churches who will work through oikos. And so just the understanding of that, I think, has been really big.
And I think to add to that is also because of in urban settings that there's such complexity, we even have to train and teach people how to engage people, places, and passion, almost oikos building rather than in a village setting or like in our prisons or factories and other contexts where people are so together, the gospel and discipleship can move rapidly. We're almost having to teach people how to build relationships, to go to places with intentionality, to use their passions. And so it's a different animal. And you talk about a huge urban setting like this, it's far more complex and takes a whole lot more teaming and working together and in tribes and affinity hubs and things like that. I just think it's far more complicated.
Yeah.
Legacy setting, we were just saying that God has given us wonderful favor across traditional and legacy churches, that even though this is running its course multiple churches, we are still serving and trying to train and raise up those in the legacy church. But they also kind of have a, they're a different dynamic and animal. So they're kind of running through and kind of trying to develop that team at NoPlaceLeft scenario. I mean, look at what God's doing through Woods Edge. What's one of the churches that you're connected
Powerhouse
to? Powerhouse Community Church, and just how God is using them through Don Waybright and others to form kind of, swarm teams that are helping out with other legacy churches. So what we're talking about with that 32,500 churches is kind of just the zero budget, directly in the harvest, planting churches, kind of the aim of that team. But that also doesn't yet include what God's doing and how he's using those from the traditional setting.
I'm figuring there's some great stories in the room. So who wants to start it off? Give me a story of what God's done.
So Guy and I will tag team this story, but about a year and a half ago, we just started working with another network in the city, Global Gates, and asked them, how can we serve you guys? What can we do to serve what God's already doing for you? And he kind of brought up a need of, we don't really have any women going out and reaching these Muslim areas that are mainly women there during the day. And so I started organizing a team of ladies to go out once or twice a week to really engage the Pakistani Muslims in our city. So some people say there's upwards of 125,000 Pakistanis in Houston.
Wow.
And so really just trying to cultivate a team of women that would go after them. And so just began to see the Lord just bring together a team. And through that, not only getting to engage Pakistanis just in one complex, it just is filled with refugees from all over the world. And one of those women was from Ethiopia.
Yeah, and so we've been, engaging in the Horn of Africa, UPGs, unreached people groups, and unengaged. And we had a particular group of unengaged, unreached people that we'd been praying for and trying to gain access into. So one of our disciples was being modeled by Sarah and her team to go out. Has been to the Horn of Africa with us, and so she's familiar with some of the peoples. Built a relationship. My son's Ethiopian. We've been serving in Ethiopia since '99. We've seen significant movements there and throughout the Horn as a result of Ethiopia being the center. But we've been praying with one of our leaders from Ethiopia how to gain access in this UUPG village. We didn't even know that we met her through this work that Sarah and them were doing. She invited us in her home. I happened to have one of our leaders with me. He came with us to the home. We shared a meal, and then she invited him to the village we were trying to gain access into. Wow. Among the UUP we had no access to, from Houston, Texas, to the Horn of Africa.
Just fill us that one more story.
Okay. Philip.
Yeah, so I said I think Travis and Jenny, who my wife and I have been discipling for the last few years, and Travis is full-time in the military. Jenny's full-time with Nationwide, and they've got 3 kids, 10, 7, and almost 2 years old. And over the last couple of years, they've shared the gospel with hundreds of people. 50, 60, 70 people in the military have heard the gospel through Travis and them as a family. And just even this last year to see 2 churches started locally through them, and even 2 churches now over in California generationally, just to see how the Lord is continuing to work through them. It just blows me away as they're just faithful to obey Jesus one step at a time and give away the kingdom of God.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about No Place Left Houston, listen to the previous episode, number 152, and you'll hear me talk to the team leaders, Ray and Sarah Boyd. And if you're enjoying the Movements podcast, spread the word by social media. It's a great help. I'm Steve Addison for the Movements podcast. Bye now.